Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the only man to shoot the same non-threat 4 times at Nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. All too often, gun owners and gun culture are portrayed in the worst possible ways in the media. Old, racist white guys who love their guns more than kids. This podcast aims to counter that narrative by shining a light on the members of gun culture who are involved in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, while IDPA members make up just a tiny fraction of the overall gun-owning public, I think they're a representative cross-section of that demographic. They're all races, young and old, men and women, salt-of-the-earth kinds of people who love their country and who are great people to be around. And this podcast is about them. Today, you're going to meet one of these awesome people. But first, let me tell you about Shoot Steel. Founded in 2008 by an IDPA competitor, Shoot Steel is the industry leader in steel targets. Static targets, gongs, target stands, reactive targets. If you or your club need steel targets, go to unloadpodcast.com/steel and check them out today. And when you buy, we'll earn a small commission to help keep the lights on here at Unload and Show Clear. So go to unloadpodcast.com/steel and order today. All right, time to get on with the show. Here is today's special guest. Today's guest is Bora Angel from Plano, Texas. Bora, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, tell us a little about yourself, where you're from. You're in Plano now by way of Atlanta. Tell us what you do for a living and how you ended up in Plano.
I'm a technology architect, I guess, by profession, and I work for a major retailer / manufacturer, an international company with headquarters in Richardson. And what I guess my previous job kind of brought us into Texas. My wife is a Texan, and apparently all Texans like to come back to Texas. So, and I had a lot of family in Texas. Well, I still have a lot of family in Texas, but I had family in Dallas at the time. So we figured, after 20-some years of not living, or at least for me, in the same state as family, it would be nice to, for once, do it. So that's how we kind of ended up here about back in 2014. And I guess I used to be involved. I've been involved with IDPA started back in Atlanta area with GAT from 2011. But I guess I always thought that we loved our guns in Georgia a lot, but it turns out Texas is another level.
Exactly right. Have you always been interested in guns and shooting? Did you grow up around guns, or is that something that you were introduced to later?
Well, I technically couldn't have grown up around guns because, as you probably know, I was born in Turkey and came to the United States about when I was 15 years old. So up until 15, I knew only one person ever that was a civilian owned guns. Back in the day when I was a kid in Turkey, only the police, military, or the terrorists had guns. So civilians just did not have access. So I didn't grow up around guns. But obviously, when I came to the United States, I came to the South, and I've been around guns since then.
What was the interest? What got you started? Was it hunting with friends? Was it just going out shooting, plinking? What was it that sparked the interest?
Well, I didn't. Even though I've been shooting guns in the South since I was 15, I guess. But the event that I didn't even own a gun living in Atlanta up until one day where I had to call 911 because there was gunshots behind my house, which living close to downtown Atlanta, hearing gunshots was not a big deal. Hearing them right behind your house was a big deal. So I, in a panic, I called 911, and I was on hold for 15 minutes before I could talk to anyone. So, and there was no police officers were dispatched as a result of that call. So I realized that since I love my family and it's up to me to be able to protect, me and mine, it was time to go get a gun. And I think I'm a logical person, so I wanted to be a responsible gun owner. So I, even though I figured I knew how to operate a gun, I got some training for myself and my wife as we were getting our first gun. And from there, I guess my type A personality take over. So I seeked a lot more training, trained with some great tactical trainers. I got certified as a NRA instructor. I started teaching NRA firearms safety classes, especially because I knew a lot of people who own guns, but most of them either didn't practice with them or were probably not proficient with them. And I kind of wanted to make sure the people around me knew how to use those guns safely. So
you went whole hog.
Yeah, and but unfortunately, at the same time, I was professionally, I was working for one of the largest consulting and technology companies in the world, and I got into management, and didn't really have a lot of time to plan and teach classes. And I mean, if you ever did it yourself, you probably know that it takes a lot to deal with the logistics and basically the trying to get people to sign up and show up, and it's takes a lot of time. So my work didn't quite allow that very easily, and that's actually how I ended up getting into IDPA. I heard about IDPA, and I wanted some means to be able to, even if I can't teach, I wanted some means to be able to basically keep my skills sharp. So I went to my first match. Luckily, I didn't get DQ'd. This was back in the day where GAP was in Atlanta and was one of the biggest IDPA clubs, and was definitely back in 2011, and definitely hooked from the first match. That's for sure.
Do you remember that first match?
I don't really remember that match at all. Only thing I remember is that I was shooting a SIG 226 Navy, which I still own, and I was one of the few. I think I might have been the only. It was a big match, but I think I might have been the only person who was carrying a SIG, and everybody kept telling me, "Oh, that gun is just too heavy." And it's kind of funny now looking back at it. Everybody wanted a Glock or an MNP, and I'm just laughing about it now. So,
what is your favorite division that you compete in currently? And tell us about you have a special gun that you tend to compete with most often. Tell us about that.
Yes, CDP is definitely my favorite division, and it's kind of funny that people actually know the name of my gun. That's kind of scary, but yeah, the gun it's a custom 1911 built by Combat Precision Technologies out of Cumming, Georgia. Oddly enough, it was built way after I moved out of Georgia, but
that was my next question.
Yeah, its name is Bora. I guess kind of. I sent my request to Combat Precision Technologies, and apparently the gentleman who runs it thought that he was being pranked or spammed. And for some reason, one day a few days after I sent my request in, he was talking to a friend of his saying, "I got this request from this Bora Angel guy asking for a complete custom build, and I think I'm being pranked." And apparently his friend told him that, "Oh, actually Bora is a pretty good shooter, so you might want to respond to him." So so it's definitely and I learned a lot in the process. It took 9 months for the gun to be built and sent to me. And I put in about 32,000 rounds in 2 years that it arrived, and probably moved up from a marksman in CDP to an expert and trying to make master, and got a lot of trophies in the way with that gun. So it's definitely my favorite.
Absolutely. What was your first sanction match?
It was one of the GATPA matches. I think it might have been either 2011 or 2012, Georgia State, back when GATPA used to run the Georgia State. And I actually flew back to Atlanta to shoot the last Georgia State match. But for the first 2 years until 2014, I would only shoot one sanction match a year pretty much, and that was Georgia State. I wouldn't leave Georgia. I didn't have the huge bug like I do now, I guess, travel and shoot. So,
what do you remember from that first sanction match? Is there anything that stands out?
I remember that even though it's supposed to be tier 4, there was shotgun squatting, and it's kind of funny because I haven't seen shotgun squatting since. And
no.
As a match director, I don't understand how that would ever worked. I mean, that's just total chaos to me that I shudder right now as a match director. So, yeah, I remember the shotgun squatting. GATPA was always huge on props. I remember I didn't understand the stages that well. And I think that's probably a little bit of why I became a match director. It's just sometimes, when that memory wipe device called the buzzer goes off,
yep,
you have no idea where you are, what you're doing, what your strategy was. For me, that was always a problem. And being a match director and actually be the person designing matches not only helped me with remembering stages, but also be able to look at some stages somebody else designed and understand what the intent was and be able to come up with a much better strategy to shoot it. So I think it actually overall might have had something to do with me going from a marksman to an expert to some degree, I guess, since I've been, solo mold as a match director for the last few years.
And you and I are members of the same club, the Collin County IDPA, and you rotate as match director for our local club matches. And you designed a lot of the stages for last year's Texas State match, which were excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
Tell us a little about your philosophy when it comes to designing a good IDPA stage.
I always obviously want to make it challenging, but I wanted to be more of a marksmanship challenge than just challenge for the sake of challenge. And the one thing I like when I design, especially being a CDP shooter, one thing I like to do when I design a good stage is make sure that it doesn't offer a huge benefit to one division of shooters versus another division of shooters. So I try to make it CCP, CDP friendly as much as possible. And if I can make it, I like doing stages that are symmetrical so that they're friendly both to lefty and righty shooters. But that doesn't always work out, obviously.
And you're the match director for the upcoming North Texas Regional IDPA Championship at our home range, Mission 160 in Whitewright, Texas. And this will be your first big sanctioned match. Talk a little about the preparation that goes into a sanctioned match.
Yeah, it will be definitely my first sanctioned match as the MD. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I worked very closely with Cody last year at Texas State, so I got to see a lot of it firsthand, how it was put together. I was also responsible for not only for the stages, but the match book and the setup of the stages and etc. So I had, Cody obviously is almost a legend in IDPA. Him being Collin County IDPA being the club number 7. This is we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, and Cody was, I believe, essentially the president or person who was in charge of match directing for something like 14 years.
And that's Cody Ray, by the way, for those who don't know.
Yes. So, and with that, of course, it's interesting because him having done it for so long, he has the match checklist in his head. So when he even has the, when I asked him for, hey, can you send me the spreadsheet that you use to keep track of everything? And he goes, I don't have one. And as you guys know, Cody's not a very big technology person, and partially why we haven't run electronic scoring matches before. But Ed Roof is the president of Collin County IDPA. I'm the vice president and in charge of matches. And I kind of told him, I'm sorry, I'm a technology architect. I have no excuse not to run on electronic scoring in a match.
Right.
Especially when pretty much now everybody kind of expects it. They want the scores to be available a few minutes after the match is done.
Mm-hmm.
So we're phasing in electronic scoring. We've been testing it out in our weekly matches. The first one went really well. The scores were published 5 minutes after the last shooter. So we got new tablets, and we're kind of training the SOs. And I, as an MD, I'm learning about practice score and how to do all that. So it's kind of that's part of the. We have, I believe, 10 new tablets on top of the 6 that we have been using for USPSA. So that's part of it. There's a lot of stuff about building props and making sure the range is ready. Luckily, our partner, Kevin, who owns Mission 160, has been great about it. Has been obviously making a lot of improvements to the range.
Mm-hmm.
Adding cover. It used to be 5 bays, and now he added 8 more. He's adding cover structures to most of the bays that we're going to be using, so we can stay out of the sun and elements. He's adding bathrooms and a large covered area for us to be able to do the lunch or award ceremonies. Outside of that, obviously, there's a lot of work that's going on with getting people signed up and squatted, with sponsors. With obviously, there's a match book. Let's see, what else are we doing?
How much of this stuff falls on your shoulders, and how much are you able to delegate?
Luckily, this would be a very tough undertaking for a first-time match director, but luckily I have Collin County IDPA behind me, and it's an amazing bunch of people. Things like dealing with sponsors, I've kind of delegated to Adam Roof, who was handling it last year for Texas State, so he's very familiar with that. Kobe Oven, who is our prop master for Collin County IDPA, he's dealing with taking care of the props, getting those ready. But outside of that, there's a couple of people helping with trophies, but outside of that, most things are kind of on me at the moment. I even ended up designing the back of the staff jersey on Saturday after the match, because we were having we needed to finalize, and we were having creative differences, I guess. So, but we do have a great sponsor at Zero Sports, who is actually hopefully will be doing a great job with the staff jersey, similar to what they have done last year's Texas State.
Yep. We had Ray on previously, so
great.
He does great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How, getting back to you and shooting specifically, how often do you find time to practice both dry fire and live fire, and what do you feel like is a good balance between the two?
So I'm actually heading to Nationals in Talladega in 3 weeks. So at the moment, I'm doing live fire 3 to 4 times a week. Luckily, at the moment, my work allows that to some degree for me to be able to, let's say, leave a little bit earlier on a Friday afternoon. But I'm definitely, you can find me practicing or shooting a match Saturday and Sunday. Obviously, at the range, I'm there most of the time, where a lot of people, I don't see anyone around half the time. But so I do practice 3 to 4 times a week live fire. Outside of that, life gets in the way, which means I can't dry fire every day, and it takes a lot of discipline too.
Yep.
But I do have a reminder set on my phone for 8 p.m. every night to actually do dry fire. So I try to do that as many nights as possible. And I do my practice sessions. I very methodically document them. Something I kind of learned from training with Ben Stigger of the USPSA fame, and so I can definitely tell the improvement when I do consistently dry fire during the week when I show up for a live fire session. So something that definitely most of us probably ignore. I mean, I haven't done dry firing until the last 2 years probably, but yeah.
Yep. Is there a drill that you run at the range or in dry fire just every time as a sort of a go-to warm-up, or sort of is there something that you include in your routine every time you go to the range?
Yes, definitely, and more than one. I used to do the dots. I guess the
dot torture,
not the dot torture, but the Ben Stoker dots, the six 2-inch circles. I used to do that a lot. Then I ended up creating a kind of variation of that, what I call the 3-6-9 drill. It's 3 2-inch dots from 3 yards, 3 shots in 3 seconds, and then I think like a 3-inch dot from 6 yards, 6 shots, and then a 4-inch dot from 9 yards and 9 shots, because I felt like I needed to vary the difference in kind of the I guess the cadence of which to be able to shot it. So I kind of come up with that drill. I typically do that every time. There's a few other drills I run every time I'm out there just to be able to kind of measure where I am. I mean, simple things like bill drill. I just like to see how fast I am in draw and consecutive shots and how accurate I am. I'll run that a couple of times. It doesn't take any time at all. And then I'll run drills like I'll run something like El Pres. I like to see over time how my El Pres time changes and how I'm shooting in general that day, because obviously everybody has good days and bad days.
Right.
And there's one other one I like to do is with the El Pres setup, I do 10 yards headshots only 2-2-2. Just to see, just to see how I'm doing, because something that requires me to concentrate a little bit more on accuracy, because IDP is all about accuracy nowadays.
Right, exactly.
So
as we start to wrap this up, what is it about IDPA that is special for you? What keeps you coming back? What motivates you to work as hard as you do to be the better shooter? What is it about IDPA that motivates you to build the best stages, to go out and be involved in it all the time?
Yeah, I think a big reason why I became a match director and put in so much time into being a match director is because I like to shoot good matches. And from what I've seen, good matches don't come from indifferent or burned out match directors. So, and I even noticed that by myself. If I match direct too many times in a row, it looks like I feel like all of my stage designs start looking the same. So that's why I really appreciate all the new match directors or other match directors that actually contribute in Collin County. And that's actually part of what I love about the sport. And it's really, it's a cliche every time everybody says what I love about whatever, it's the people. But the old cliche is actually true in this case, because unlike some other sports I've seen, especially in summers, we do an early start, 9 a.m. on a Saturday for outdoor match. At 7:30, you have so many people out there. I mean, we have set up seven with, some reversible, but we have set up stages in 4 different bays in a hot summer morning. And then I think the best we have done ever has been in an hour's time with all the volunteers. We set up 4 bays, full of 7 stages to be shot. And that's pretty, to me, when the first time happened, I was kind of blown away, and Cody was there, I believe, and I was pointing it out to him. It's like, this is just incredible. Mm-hmm. I mean, because the matches we have, I feel like the matches we have at Collin County, we have a pretty high standard. And, we wouldn't be able to uphold that kind of standard if it wasn't for the number of people who contribute and show up, even if it's just showing up and helping, set up and tear it down. Also, I mean, look at the fact that Collin County IDPA, we have so many safety officers, thanks to CJ and the volunteers. That's not the same in other clubs. It helps us be able to run matches so much more efficiently. And even with North Texas Regional, you see other clubs when they hold major sanction matches struggling to find safety officers even at the last moment. Compared to that, 2 months before North Texas Regional, I already had all the CSOs and SOs I needed with some spares already signed up and ready to go. So, and most of them are Collin County. I mean, we have some from nearby neighbor clubs, and I'm very grateful for their participation too. But it's just it's definitely the people, and that's one of the reasons I really enjoy IDPA, especially in Collin County. It's just much more so than anywhere else I've shot it before.
Very cool. What's the one thing, if somebody were to hear this or would hear you talking about IDPA and were to come to you and say, I'm thinking about coming out and shooting a match, what would you tell that new shooter who's thinking about shooting but they're not quite sure whether it's for them or whether they're good enough? Or a lot of people think, I need more practice before I try competition. What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first thing I would probably tell them is just come out and watch. And I think a lot of people who do come out to watch end up returning to shoot. And of course, if I sometimes do the safety briefing, and I try to tell people it's a great game. It's a game. It's a sport. We play with deadly weapons at the end of the day. Let's be honest about it. And nobody's going to enjoy it unless we're safe. So it's kind of like I used to hear the same thing in martial arts. You got to be safe and deliberate, slow, and speed comes from being smooth. So, and that comes from a lot of repetition. But you're not going to get the same type of quote unquote training or same type of gun proficiency, I don't think, without doing something like IDPA or maybe even USPSA. So I would definitely, those are probably some of my selling points for anybody who wants to come join a sport like IDPA.
Well, all right. Bora Angel, thank you so much for coming on the show. Good luck at Nationals.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me.
All right, that's all we've got for you today. Thank you so much to our special guest for coming on the show. If you know somebody in the IDPA community who deserves some recognition, I'd love to talk to them. Send me an email at Lloyd, LLOYD, at unloadpodcast.com. Check out the show notes for today's episode and listen to past episodes at unloadpodcast.com. And if you like what you hear on the show and you'd like to support us, help keep the lights on, pay the bills, we would love your support. Visit patreon.com/unload and make a small monthly contribution to help continue what we're doing here. Tune in again next week for another edition of Unload and Show Clear.